Recording in progress.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Chair.
Yes, I'm just checking for some time. I've been alone. I've seen Honorable Zone connecting. So I just want to check if we've got members to proceed.
So far, Chair, I see 3 members. I don't see Ms. Mazoni. Do you see on the platform?
I saw her on the platform.
Ms. Mazzoni is here.
Yes, I saw her on the platform.
Yes, Chairperson. Then we have enough members to proceed, Chair.
Okay. As you put up the agenda, good afternoon, honorable members. As a Deputy Minister, I saw on the platform the team from the department, the leadership of the SABC as represented by the board, led by the board chair and board members, and the CEO leading the executive team. Of course, also great civil society structures and representatives, whether in the form of LOs from entities as well as South Africans who are following us in the platforms made available by Parliament to ensure public participation in the work of Parliament. Of course, I would, without waste of time, just deal with the formalities now that there's indication that we could proceed. Just to remind members and all other participants that are on the platform that this is the meeting of the Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, convened in line with the rules of the National Assembly, which also affects the work of its committees. So for meetings convened on this platform, we are reminded that at all times we should ensure that our mics are muted, video camera switched off until you are recognized by the chairperson. Then at that time when you are to speak, as recognized by the chairperson, you'll then proceed to unmute your mic and switch on your video camera. In a situation where you experience connectivity challenges, you may ask for the permission of the chair to switch off your video camera so as to maximize your bandwidth. Of course, we do know that from time to time, those that lose connectivity and you have to reconnect to the platform. Ensure at all times that as you reconnect, that your video camera is switched off and your mic is muted, as mics are sensitive and could therefore pick up background sounds that may disrupt the meeting. Whilst point of orders are allowed in terms of the rules, members are advised to use the gadget to raise their hand so that you are recognized by the chair. In a case the chair is unable to recognize you, the committee support will also raise. At the point that you are recognized, you'll then proceed to switch on your video camera, unmute your mic, and proceed to raise the point of order on which the chairperson could rule upon in terms of the rules. Members are further guided not to raise unnecessary point of orders to a point that the meeting such honorable
Chairperson.
kicked out because on my side it didn't show that there's problems. Honorable members, as we proceed, I will then, as I said, go to the agenda without waste of time. I know members are from a sitting on the questions to the Deputy President. Can you then put the agenda back? As you'd see, honorable members, there would be a briefing on the corporate plan and progress on the stopgap measures, which will be from the SABC. And then we take a briefing from the Oversight task team on the SAPO business rescue plan implementation. Of course, on this item, in particular, the report we wanted was on the Oversight task team, which report has been received. But furthermore, for members' attention, the BRP progress report, which if you read the report, you will see that other dates, certain things should have happened, which are not part of the report at this point. This report is merely for members because we had asked that over and above the reports that we need to get by summoning the BRP to come before us, but that on a monthly basis we can get reports as members so as to know where things are. So that additional information is on the basis of that request. But in terms of the plan of the meeting, we were expecting a presentation by a team that does oversight, which then is comprised of National Treasury, the department, and SAPO, so that we do not leave the process entirely to a BRP practitioners and not really keep an eye. And we said we're doing this, drawing lessons from the GTEC situation and the turnaround in the SABC and where we are today, lessons we can take from also the SAA situation, so that we keep an eye on what's happening there. So in the main, the report is the task team oversight report, so that they give us the state of affairs, and we'll use the other document as a way of building up our understanding of what's happening there. Would expect to get such reports monthly, and we're putting it as such also in the legacy report, so that the 7th Parliament would know that at least there was a mechanism put by the committee to get such reports. So I'm giving this explanation, Deputy Minister, so that when you deal with the overview that you deal with, you'll understand from where the committee came from, so that there are no matters of sensitivity on matters that are still pending, that are presented. But we look at what the oversight talks to us about. Of course, the other 3 reports will really be about the committee. So at that point, we would not keep others on the platform if they would want to be released. We hope we'll be able to run the committee in a qualitative manner from a point of engagement and time, so that we execute our work properly. So that's where we are. Of course, as we usually do, we'll give the ministry to do an overview in presenting the reports that are before us. And from that point, we'll then introduce the time on the presentation. Deputy Minister.
Good morning, Chair, Honorable Chair, and good morning to all the honorable members. I'm asking that I should switch off my video, Chair. I'm not in quite a good place where
Yes,
I can.
Permission granted, Deputy Minister.
Okay. All right. No, thank you very much, Chair. And greetings to all the honorable members, the chairperson of the SABC board, the group CEO, and the delegation from the board and the department. Chair, thank you very much for granting us the opportunity to come back to you to present the SABC corporate plan. You'd recall, Chair, sometime last year, we came before you to present the corporate plan, but unfortunately at the time when we were presenting, the plan had been overtaken by some developments. Some of the assumptions, especially around the budget, were then undermined by the available evidence at that stage. So you asked us to go back to revise the corporate plan and come back. So the SABC is ready to do that. As part also of the corporate plan presentation, they've developed the strategy which they are going to share with yourself. We wish to take this opportunity once more to welcome the new group CEO. I know that she's been before the committee, but not coming to present the corporate plan, which I must say that she also gave some significant inputs into the plan, and we welcome that as the ministry, as the department. They did come to us to present to the minister. We are quite satisfied with the plan as it is, Chairperson, which I don't want to get into it. I'm going to allow that the Chairperson should do the overview, and I'm sure the Group CEO is ready to take you through. It's quite a very lengthy document. I must say that, Chair, we continue to be worried about the finances of the corporation. You'd recall that we came to you to present an SABC bill. Unfortunately, you were not able to process the bill because of the time pressures as you are preparing, as this parliament is preparing to rise. So it will, in all probability, be processed in the next parliament. That bill for us is important because it seeks to address some of the financial challenges that the corporation is faced with. In particular, addressing the question of funding of the public service mandate. As you will see from the presentation, that's an area that it's worrying us because the SABC is putting a lot of its resources on funding the public mandate, public service mandate, which should have been funded from the fiscus. So you will see the figures as they present. And this is one area which, if it were to be addressed, we may not have serious challenges in as far as the financial viability of the corporation is concerned. So I hope that the committee members will interact with that information. As you know, in the last financial year, the corporation posted a revenue loss of almost R1 billion, which is an issue that the executive is attending to it. There is a forecasted loss, as you will see from the presentation, especially on the budget. There is a forecast loss, which is a bit lesser than what was experienced in the last financial year. And all of those details, you'll see them. But over a period of time, the corporation expects to break even. If the corporate plan and some of the plans that are contained in the strategy are to be implemented successfully. But the issue of funding continues to be an issue for us, as you know, that when the Minister of Finance presented the budget, we were hoping that there would be some allocation, particularly that which was to help us to cover the elections. But unfortunately, there was no allocation as we had expected. So we are having to rearrange, reprioritize, so that there is sufficient allocation for the corporation to make sure that, at least for the election period, the broadcasting of these elections is not interrupted in any way. On SAPO chair, as you know, that the entities under business rescue, 2 business rescue practitioners have been appointed. They've prepared the business rescue plan, presented to the creditors. It has been voted for. And that is the plan that is currently under implementation. There are engagements with the National Treasury because from the very beginning, it was very clear to us that for us to be able to implement the business rescue plan, there was going to be a need for resources to be committed by Treasury. So those discussions are there. Our minister had a meeting with the Minister of Finance last week. And so those discussions are continuing so that we can find money to finance this plan so that we're able to rescue the South African Post Office. So we will take you through the presentation. Mr. Shlembe, the DDG of Oversight in our department, is going to take us through the presentation. The presentation has been shared with the rest of the members. So without wasting any more time, Chair, let me take this opportunity and invite the chairperson of the SABC board, Mr. Katu, to Ramugumba, to take us through or just to introduce and allow the group CEO to take the members through. Chair, are you here?
Yes. Thank you, Deputy
Okay.
Minister. Maybe just before we give over to the SABC, it would appear that from the time I got cut off and brought back, just for formality, that the apology of Member Bodlani would have not been placed on record. And I would therefore use this opportunity to do so, that is placed on record, and check if the committee support would have not presented further apologies.
Chairperson, we have an apology for the Minister, Chair, and then Ms. Bodlani is online, but she will leave early. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. With that, with those apologies that we thought should be placed on record, we then proceed to the SABC board chair, and this is where I start introducing the time that
Chair,
members have had the opportunity to go through the presentations. So would expect you to really raise silent points on the presentations, to also take the public into confidence, not really the line by line presentation. So the first would be the 35 minutes, given that you are dealing with both the corporate plan and the stopgap measures, the feedback, and the next presentation will take the 30 minutes. You can then
Chairperson,
you can come in the
Chair. My apologies, Chair. I forgot to indicate that I've got a pressing matter at 2:30, which I have to attend. It's an emergency that I have to attend with the board of BBI. It's extremely urgent that we attend to that, Chair. So I'm going to ask that if we are not done by 2:30, may I please be excused? Thank you, Chair.
We'll note that, Deputy Minister. We hope that you'll stick to the time. My estimation is that we should be done, and that we are left with just concluding our committee items.
Okay.
Yes. Proceed.
Thank you very much. Over to the Chair, Katu.
Thank you very much, Chair and Deputy Minister, for the introduction. Maybe just to start by greeting you, Chair, and the honorable members of the committee, as well as the Deputy Minister, the DDG, and the DDGs who are in the platform, but also to introduce the delegation from the SABC. We do have the Deputy Chair of the board in the platform. We also have board member Maimela in the platform. And then we have the Group Chief Executive Officer, supported by the Group Chief Financial Officer and the Acting Group Chief Operating Officer. We will then take you through the corporate plan and a brief update on the progress that would have been made in relation to the short-term intervention strategy that would have been implemented last year. I do wish to indicate, Chair, that we would have preferred to go into the bit of the details of the corporate strategy in the in-committee session, but it does seem that our letter of requesting that may not have maybe find its way to the committee. So we'll find the way of balancing between presenting the strategy without necessarily giving away too much on strategy, take on the competition in that particular sense. But let me just then briefly start with Chair, the second part of the presentation, and then I'll come back to the corporate plan. You would recall that when we came into office, 3 months into office, we were confronted with an advisory from management which suggested that the SABC was facing a potential day zero in the next 6 months, which could have led to a situation where the SABC may not have been in a position to pay the salaries of its employees, or even face a risk of a blackout of our broadcasting services. What that demanded, Chair, was that as the board, we refocus our immediate attention to developing what we termed a short-term intervention strategy, which was aimed at making sure that in the short term, whilst we're developing the long-term strategy for the SABC to turn around the fortunes of the SABC, we're able to ensure that the SABC is sustainable in the immediate. To that extent, we developed a short-term strategy intervention, which we socialized and presented to the minister and the department. From a shareholder point of view, we also came to this committee and presented it here. To this end, Chair, what you will see when the colleagues do come in to present the detail of it is that although we may not have achieved everything that we had set ourselves to achieve in that short-term intervention strategy, at least we have been able to avoid the potential day zero that we were faced with when we started or when we got to develop that short-term intervention strategy. To this end, Chair and members, the SABC continues to pay its employees their salaries when they fall due every month. The SABC remains on edge. I must state that, however, this is being achieved under extremely difficult conditions, where we have had to defer expenditure programs, some of it very, very critical, ensuring the continued broadcasting services of the SABC, and in certain instances, having to manage our working capital and which service providers to pay at which point, and so forth. So it's been a success, but not the manner in which we would have wished for it to be. Nevertheless, Chair, we then focused our attention to developing a long-term strategy for the SABC, which will be for the 5-year period of the MTSF, as it were. And in developing that strategy, Chair and members, we first understood and interrogated the state of the organization, the state of the corporation that is the SABC, but also interrogated the state of the broadcasting sector, both locally and globally, and also investigated to understand the direction that the sector will be taking in the future, in order to make sure that the corporate strategy that we develop responds to the immediate challenges that the SABC faces today, but also responds to what the future holds within the sector, so that we not only survive, but we are able to excel and claim our rightful position in the sector, both locally and globally. So you would see when the Group Chief Executive Officer and the team present some detail of the corporate strategy, that we seek to respond to the immediate challenges, whether it be the question of the ASO that will finally happen by the 31st of this year, but also to then say, how do we reposition the SABC of the future by exploiting the OTT platforms, which by and large, from a video entertainment point of view, represent the direction of where the sector already is and where the sector is headed going into the future. So, Chair, you will get those details. We must also state that the corporate plan and the budget that goes with it, it's quite an ambitious one. And you will hear the Group Chief Financial Officer when she comes in to speak to the budget section of the corporate plan, that she will highlight the high risk factor associated with the revenue projections that we have put forward in this budget, because they're quite ambitious. You will also note, Chair and members, that this corporate plan and the budget that accompanies it takes the position that we are not expecting anything to come through from the fiscals on the basis of the experience that we have had thus far, despite the attempts that we've continued to make. So what you will see are the projections that are based on the SABC that fights to fend to survive on its own, and that then seeks to do so well in the market, to the extent that it generates enough revenue to cover even the unfunded public service mandate, which is in the region of 2.1 to 2.4 billion rand per annum. So it's quite an ambitious strategy, Chair and members, but we're committed to delivering it. I must state upfront that despite these efforts and the plans that we've put in place, which we hope to be able to deliver a sustainable SABC without the intervention of the government or the shareholder, as it were, it remains our strong position that the fiscus, the government, the shareholder, must fund this public service mandate, universal access mandate, especially in the face of a failed TV license regime, Chair. And will continue to engage and persuade the shareholder to make sure that that funding does come through. And we do hope that this committee will reinforce and re-emphasize that message, that it is necessary for the fiscus to fund the public service mandate of the SABC in order to make sure that the SABC is placed in an environment where it can be able to survive, but it can be placed in an environment where the ground is equalized for it to be able to compete in the market with the competitors, as it were. So, Chair, at this point, and also in the interest of time, let me leave it here and hand over to the Group Chief Executive Officer and the team to be able to take the committee through the high-level presentation of the corporate strategy and the corporate plan, together with the accompanying budget. Just to state that, as the Deputy Minister indicated as I close, that in our ambitions, we are projecting a much reduced loss for the 2025-2026, rather 2024-2025 financial year. You would recall, as the Deputy Minister correctly alluded, that in the previous financial year, 2022-2023, the SABC had posted a loss of 1.1 billion. At this stage, we are projecting that for the 2023-2024 financial year, which will end on the 31st of March, we will be reporting a loss of about 580 million. Out the way we're projecting it, Chair, we would have at least halved the losses from the previous financial year. And then what you will then see is that in 24-25, we are projecting a loss of about 240 million.
Not sure if it's on my side.
It's not on your side, Chairperson. I think no, it's not on your side, Chair. Probably the presenter.
Okay. SABC.
We're waiting for the group CEO. Not sure whether she's struggling.
Yeah.
Chair, are you able? Oh, yeah, you are here.
Yes, I'm here. I think our chair just got cut off. Good day to the portfolio committee, to the minister, the deputy minister of DCDT, to the chair of the portfolio committee, the chair of the SABC, and I see the deputy chair is also joining us, to our board members, to the esteemed members of the portfolio committee. I see that we are all struggling with bandwidth this morning. So, Chair, if I may I kindly ask that I switch off the video and I will present with audio only, so that I prevent myself from also having connectivity issues.
Permission granted.
Thank you. I will share this, and if I may, I'd like to share on my side, but it's not allowing me to share because it's saying only the host can share. If I may be giving sharing rights.
We've given you sharing rights. Go ahead.
Thank you. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Oh, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm at full screen. Chair, you did indicate earlier that you might give us some time, indicate how much time we've got to present. Or can I just go ahead?
No, I had indicated that you had 35 minutes and the chair's taken a bit of that.
Okay, I'm going to have to rush it.
Silent points, really.
Okay.
To also help the public follow. Otherwise, members have received the documentation well on time.
Yeah. So I will skip some of the slides. Thank you. This is the content to the presentation, but I will not cover all of it simply because we just don't have enough time to thoroughly ventilate all of it, because what's important, I'd like to ensure that we get to the budget section, but even there, our CFO will not get into the detail of it because it is available, on the presentation that has been sent. We all know the SABC's purpose, vision, mission, and value, and we've put this in just to remind ourselves of that, and that as SABC, we want to be South Africa's #1 most trusted media brand. We want to remain South Africa's most trusted media brand. And that, an independent public broadcaster is the strongest enabler of a free, inclusive democracy. We believe that everyone everywhere must be able to make well-informed decisions about their lives and the society in which they live, contributing to a robust, sustainable democracy. I'm not going to go through all of this page, but I think what's important on this slide is just to articulate that this strategy is an iterative process. We know that we can't, when certain things happen, the market changes, viewership behaviors change, etc., that we insist that we've got a 5-year plan and we must stick to it. We know what happened in 2020 with COVID. What is important is that we've actually built in, although we believe in certainty and predictability, but we've had to build in some flexibility and agility in order to ensure that we are able to achieve on the plan. And what's new or different, because I'm certain that members of the committee have seen many of these presentations previously, what's important here is that we really are operating in a new broadcasting world. We've expanded our indicators to include all channels and platforms. You'll see that we don't just talk about linear radio or TV, we really are talking about an omni-channel ecosystem, which is where the world has moved to. We've brought in the horizon thinking, which I will take you through in a very a quick manner, but what it does is that it really helps us to look at short-term optimization and future growth and disruption. We have looked at, really articulated the clarity on revenue and our cost levers, and the CFO will go through some of that, but the most important thing there is really looking at how we are going to grow our sales team beyond selling and and ensure that it's more about solutions development and building on audience segmentation and reach strength. We really have a focus on leveraging our public value broadcasting because we see it as a strength and not a liability. There's a big focus on leveraging innovation and research, because we all know that, for example, sign language is the 12th language. And what does that look like? So it requires us to innovate so that we are able, for example, to cater for the deaf adequately. And I think what's important as well is we really want to ensure that we focus on consciously shaping SABC's reputation for the long term. There's a big focus on our people, which is very critical. We want to invest in attracting, in recruiting and retaining the best talent. If you look at what's happened previously in terms of the target operating model, we had issues of the Section 189 restructure. And one of the key things we're doing is that we're addressing the inequities in the job grading. We're looking at really leveraging competitive real-world employee value propositions to attract the best external talent and really drive our reputation, remuneration, and culture, which is really going to be critical in actually taking us to a future SABC. Obviously, that really comes with addressing that impact of the target operating model on the morale of the organization, which currently is a bit complex and challenging for us. We want to strengthen our sales and commercial capability because we really need to compete in advertising and sponsorship revenue, and therefore it means that we must strengthen this capability from within. We want to build capacity in our HR division because it really needs to be strategically relevant and enable us to fulfill key roles which are currently missing. We will be reconnecting with our people. This process is ongoing, and really with reconnecting with managers, with leaders, and ensuring that we've got highly engaged people and consciously shaping a purpose-driven, strategically aligned culture, and importantly, to activate our leaders so that they ensure that we strategically align with our people. We've got key takeaways when we were developing this plan, and there's 7 of them that we've got here. What's important is that we recognize that SABC, despite its challenges, is South Africa's leading media brand. We have by far the greatest reach and diversity of platforms and channels. We are unparalleled when it comes to that. Financial sustainability is our existential threat. We have liquidity, we have going concern and solvency risks, and the CFO will speak to that. We recognize, to the chair's point, that government funding for public interest mandate is unlikely. And the statement is just based on the experience that we've had in trying to attain this government funding. It's important for us to recapacitate SABC. And I spoke about the 189. We want to win trust and ensure equitable HR practices within the organization. We recognize that the analog switch off is a significant risk. The 31st of December is a couple of months away, and it's important for us to mitigate in terms of audiences and our mandate. Our people are critical, and digital transformation is an imperative for us, and therefore we need to invest for relevance and to be future fit. It's something that we cannot ignore. So what we've done is that we've translated that into what we call our top 10 breakthrough programs, which are a critical focus for both the board and the executives. Then first one is the innovative funding model, because we have to ensure financial sustainability.
That's hold, or again, I'm not sure it's on my side. I just want to be sure members.
Can you still hear me?
Having it differently. You are talking to the top 10 slide, but
yes,
on my screen it is the first slide. There's no movement. I'm just doing this also for members of the public to follow.
Can you see the slide now?
Yes, now the slide 9.
Okay.
But as I say, unless members were seeing the other slides, but I couldn't. Yeah, I think we can proceed.
Okay. I will proceed. This is the top 10 breakthrough programs, and these are very critical programs for us, starting with the innovative funding model, which ensures the financial sustainability of the organization. It means that we must look at different funding streams that are going to make us sustainable for the future. Digital automation and transformation is very critical for us because we really need to increase our efficiency. And the reality is that intelligent decision-making and content configuration is critical. So we talk about the datafication of everything going forward. And therefore, digital transformation is very key. And it's something that we haven't invested in because we've really had to just invest in our survival. The analog switch off is a looming sector for us, and it's important for us to retain audiences at risk of being lost by the switch off. So we are mitigating against that, and there are solutions on the table that are with our board. SABC Plus Growth, which is our OTT platform, over-the-top platform. The chairperson spoke to that, and this is one of our key areas where we are really, our ambition there is for SABC Plus to be at the core of our streaming flagship, including offering digitized versions of our archives and our catalogs. So this is going to play a very big role in terms of the development of our monetizing models. Sales effectiveness is very critical for us because this is where really the commercial aspect of the organization sits, and therefore we really need to increase our sales revenues and margins, but it also requires us to have the right people with the right skills and with enhanced client relationships. We are here competing with the private sector who really have armies of salespeople who are highly trained, who go out there and compete with us for advertising revenue. Therefore, we are very cognizant that we really need to build our capacity when it comes to market research, our audience analysis, creative campaign, etc. Human capital readiness goes without saying. We must and we will invest in the right people at the right time in order for them to be able to execute. The innovation capability, you'll see it coming through strongly. It's also a new pillar for us that we've brought through, and it's important for us to establish and have a visibility of innovation initiatives. S3, which is SABC3, is one of our TV channels that has gone through many repositions, but we've really sat back and we are busy with diagnostics, and we're going to be reconfiguring S3 based on distinct commercial insights, because we realize that we can't put lipstick on a pig. We really have to do something breakthrough and innovative in order to make it more commercially successful. Digitization is critical. So we are busy with digitizing our content. We're busy digitizing our back catalog, and we believe that that's going to play a very good role in helping us with those revenue streams. And content acquisition is critical. And the CFO will talk about the fact that we have not really invested so much in content acquisition, because in terms of the investment numbers, in the last 10 years, it's been the same investment over 10 years. It hasn't taken into account inflation. And therefore, content acquisition is really a differentiator, because we are in the content business. We are fighting with other content providers across different platforms, whether it's the traditional ones or the digital ones that have come through being brought by foreign brands and foreign competitors. We're very clear about our strategy impact in terms of public interest mandate. We are looking for enabling legislation. Therefore, the SABC bill is mission critical to us so that we can manage these tensions that we're experiencing, so that it really helps us to level the playing fields, and it helps to fund the public value that we are delivering. And obviously, we're very clear about the commercial mandate in terms of ensuring that we've got the right content on the right platform at the right time, at the right price, because we live in a world of immediacy. We live in a world where content is easily available, and we need to ensure that we build those value sharing partnerships that are built by that public interest mandate, the enabling legislation, and obviously the content mandate. This is the 3 horizons that I was referring to earlier, which is very important. We refer to this as the SABC journey. And what it is basically that in order for us to remain relevant to a changing world and deliver on our 5-year strategic plan, we have adopted the 3 horizons approach with built-in assumptions for the planning period. And what it does is that we've developed clear deliverables across these 3 horizons with specific metrics across both outcome and output level. The horizons are not sequential, but are parallel. And these are very critical in helping us achieve the future state of SABC. And for example, as I sit here, we are in Horizon 1, where we are optimizing and renewing. And underneath that, we're looking at things like an ecosystem of partners.
Let's make sure that you move the slides.
I am moving. I think we've got a connection issue, Chair. The slides are moving on my side, but not for everybody else. So I've just done this again.
Yes.
Maybe I shouldn't make it full screen. Is it readable if I leave it like this?
Yeah, we can read from it.
Okay. But, I think let me leave it like this. Let me not make it full screen, because perhaps it's lagging. when I move from one screen to another, because on my side it moves, but then everybody else doesn't see it. But going back to these horizons, the horizons for us are very important because they really help us with the future fitting and ensuring that we've planned for the future. In Horizon 1, like I was saying, is that we're looking at the optimizing and renewal, where we are looking at our ecosystem of partners and adapting to a changing consumer habits. And these are all really encompassed by our, we've articulated them with specific metrics across both our outcomes and our output level. So you'll see that in Horizon 1, you start seeing pockets of the future embedded in the present, and then you also start seeing, and those are underpinned by the second horizon, the third horizon, which really takes us all the way to disruptive game-changing solutions, which we believe are what's going to allow us to sustain ourselves and really thrive for the future. Let me move on to financial sustainability challenge, because that's really what the chair was talking about earlier. And it's important for me to point out that we are confronted with an enormous challenge to deliver exceptional public interest broadcasting and to retain our status as South Africa's free-to-air broadcaster of choice. And if you look at this slide, you'll realize that public broadcasters are globally funded, and we are not on this list as SABC. And what has happened is that our finances constrain our ability to think and act strategically and invest in our future. And therefore, we need to build a burning platform around the funding of public broadcasting. We really do require that legislative reform and the development of a fit-for-purpose funding framework. And this remains essential for long-term survival of the SABC, because without that, we really will be struggling in a very competitive and an environment that is really being disrupted. We have identified our top 3 SWOT elements. If you look at our strengths, I've spoken through them. We are a credible brand, we have the reach, and we have the range of channels, and now we're really bringing in the digital platforms. From a weakness side, we do acknowledge that we've got the weakness of speed to strategy execution, which speaks to the fact that from an HR perspective, we're not capacitated to be future fit. We have a weakness for access to global content. We don't have the funding to actually compete in the global markets to be able to access fit for purpose and compelling and relevant content. And obviously, our analog-centered capabilities have been a handbrake for us that is going to be addressed when it comes to the analog switch-off. The funding uncertainty is a threat to SABC, because what it's doing is that it's driving irrelevance, because we are unable to be relevant to a new market. South Africa has an age median of 27.4 years, meaning that South Africans are below the age of 28. And to stay relevant, we need to really drive consideration in those markets, which we are currently at a danger of not being able to do. And obviously, access to digital technologies and skilled people is important. But it's not all doom and gloom, because we have recognized the opportunities, which is about digital enablement, the strategic partnership, and expanding across platforms, devices, and screens. I spoke about these SABC pillars, which underpin the delivery of our SABC strategy and have been integrated with our strategic goals. And what we've done here is that we've included a new pillar, which is research and innovation, which is very critical and is very well thought out in the corporate plan that you have at hand. These are strategic goals, which are actually very critical in how we structure ourselves. And these are plotted across the 3 horizons, which I showed you earlier, and they are encapsulated in the corporate plan. And I think what's important here is that you start seeing the strategic goals, and there's 8 of them, the goals, and that they're underpinned by goals, by the outcomes themselves. I'm not going to thoroughly go through those outcomes because we don't have the time to do that. But at a high level, we talk about a well-governed SABC. We talk about the readiness of our people. We talk about a digitally transformed broadcaster. We talk about a trusted broadcaster that enjoys public confidence. We talk about financial sustainability, an SABC that consistently delivers public value, a preferred broadcaster from an audience, content, producers, and stakeholders perspective. So this is really the ecosystem that we are referring to when we are talking about our strategic goals and outcomes. I'm not going to go through the corporate plans and indicators and targets, because they will take me a bit of time to go through them, and based on the time given, I won't have the time, but they are available. The deck has been shared. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get into the financial side of it, so that we surface the budget and where we're going from a financial perspective. And I want to say that before I hand over to the CFO, the budget reflects its newly developed strategy that includes bold plans for innovation and on traditional revenue streams, but it's also aggressive pursuit of our new revenue streams in the form of partnerships and digital platforms. And I think what's important is that the budget is really a high-risk budget due to the fact that a number of the initiatives we've planned that they will help us increase the revenue are still in developmental or early implementation stage. So that's where the high risk profile comes in, but the CFO will take us through it. And lastly, I really must emphasize that the SABC is self-funded, with 83% of our funding being generated from commercial activities that I alluded to earlier. I did not get into the detail of them because I did not have time to do that. And that television licenses and the government grant only contribute 13% and 4% respectively. And therefore, this really shows us the challenge in which SABC finds itself. And in order to be sustainable, that burning platform is of really finding a fit for purpose, sustainable funding framework is very critical to allow us to be able to deliver on this public mandate and also become commercially viable and sustainable for the future. I'm going to hand over to the CFO. CFO, would you like me to present on my side? Or how would you want to manage it?
If it's okay with you, CEO, maybe I should take over. It might be just a bit simpler. I'm ready in the background.
Yeah, especially because it looks like I've got a challenge on my side. I'm sharing. Okay.
Okay. Who is okay? I'm sharing now, I believe.
Yes,
okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair of the committee members, my board chair, deputy chair, as well as my CEO and others on the platform. I'm going to briefly share with you some highlights from our financial performance anticipated for the next financial year. What we did as a start, we did a bit of a research into the trends in the organization in the past 19 years. What we do conclude is just in select few cases, in fact, in 2 years specifically, the organization lifted its head above the net loss line. What we also see is that regardless of the type of events that take place over this period, that didn't seem to necessarily reflect itself in the performance of the organization. But in the course of this, as the CEO mentioned, we did realize that in Rand terms, we are still today, 20 years later, spending the same amount on content, while as if you were to factor in inflation, we are probably spending less in real terms. And that was an important message from the specific activity that we undertook. So as said, we start this new financial year on Sunday or Monday, in quite a very difficult situation with financial sustainability under significant threat. We have serious liquidity issues, our solvency is high risk, and our going concern has already been disclaimed by the AG in the past financial year. We did roll up a projected loss of 242 million, and if you exclude non-cash items like depreciation and amortization, that loss is anticipated to be about 42 million rand. But as also said by the chair, it is a very high risk number. However, with our new CEO, the board now established, the strategy in place, and as we are also addressing a number of other internal risk factors and challenges, we are hopeful that we will go some way into achieving this budget. What we did have to do as part of the interventions to manage the situation is to develop a funding framework that saw to us mapping and matching our income and our expenditure as best as is possible. But we have unfunded elements, and one particular one is CapEx. This slide just shared with you a brief overview of what is effectively in the next few slides. So committee chair, I will hopefully be quite short after this. Our revenue is projected to be 6.4 billion rand. Though the market is growing by 5.5%, our SABC growth, you can see it in the top bubble here, is envisaged to be aggressive, ambitious, as the chair said, 15% on advertising revenue, 28% sponsorship, even television licenses grow. And then we are very committed to exploring and entering into partnerships. It's a theme of our industry today, whether it is with respect to content acquisition or in the revenue space. We are going to aggressively explore these and hopefully engage, become a partner in a few of them. Advertising revenue, of course, can only grow on the back of audience growth, and as such, with our liquidity challenges and our inability to necessarily procure the kind of content that we need, and the liquidity strain on our production houses, that is going to be a tall order. If you look at our expenditure of our 6.7 billion rand expenditure, which is a 19% growth, and I'll elaborate on that in the next slide, about 80% of that are fixed. So if you are faced with liquidity and solvency challenges, it's very difficult to make inroads and reduce or delay. You can effectively only do that on the remaining 20%. In the 80%, at the top in the block there, you can see what are the three main contributors: payroll, signal and distribution cost, and content, of course. So just to emphasize the fact that if our revenue number is not going to realize as we are projected here, and whether partially or fully the risk materializes, then there is a point where even these three items, apart from the other 80% that are fixed, are going to be jeopardized in our ability to settle these obligations. I also like to look at the contributors to losses from a different angle. That's what the next block is trying to illustrate to you. SABC2 have been struggling with performance. It continues to do so. S3 have, I don't know when last it actually made a profit. It has traditionally yielded losses of about 250 million on average a year. And this year, again, we're envisaging the trend to continue, albeit a little bit reduced. Sports of national interest, in our case, we've never been able to monetize effectively and make a profit from it. And you can see the impact that has on our financial performance. Loss-making radio stations are at about 80 million rand. And then, of course, news, albeit the fact that we have reduced the cost of news in the last year or two, with a significant growth in revenue, also being able to identify the revenue generated by news on the free-to-air channels, it is still a loss. And maybe that specific little bit that remains will continue to be difficult to monetize. And as such, these elements then add up to about 890 million rands worth of losses. The loss and the non-cash part is unfunded today. We have a capex requirement of about 1 billion in the next financial year. We only have about 55 million rand left. As such, even in the past year, as a result of the liquidity challenges, our 86-line long-term capital plan is now at about 5 or 6. And we are absolutely focusing on just that. That is critical to maintain broadcast on air. Our equity, that is where the solvency conversation pops up. We have a low equity, opening equity as at Sunday, and equity is affected by losses. So if we continue to make losses in coming months, we can very quickly erode our opening equity, and then we are unfortunately even in the space of a potential technical insolvency. Currently, the organization is commercially insolvent because we are unable to settle our obligations when they are due. And here in this little block, you can just see the impact of debt that is in our balance sheet on the 31st of March 2025. Last block deals with cash. Our opening balance, which still includes a bit of bailout and interest on the bailout, as well as funding that's been ring-fenced for 3 of the big capex projects that remain, is about 400 million. In the course of this financial year, we will erode that. And it is safe to say that our service providers funded the organization in the 2024 financial year. That's why our debt increased significantly, and they are unable to continue to do that. We are also aware of that Treasury issued what they call the reduction budget, and our funding framework internally was a similar concept to that. We are simply not able to secure funding elsewhere either. So, and as a consequence, investment in growth, per the previous slide, there was also a reference to that. We should have been investing in technologies. We should have invested in infrastructure and in growth. But over the past 20 years, and then also in the next year, it has not been possible, and you do pay a price for that. In this specific slide is just more detail. I won't go into any of it explicitly. Just suffice to say, the CEO did refer to it though, our main revenue streams. And now that you see where I pointed out losses, you can see the big ones are the main contributors are all where the major risk lies. And it will be a very delicate balancing act, therefore. Our expenditure, as I said, I'll come back to that. Because of the current liquidity situation, we have really reverted to not only cost saving, but austerity measures. And as such, it is only broadcast critical and lights and water kind of procurement and services delivery that is taking place. But because of some of the initiatives that are already long overdue, we this year merely could postpone it. And therefore, you see the growth anticipated in 2025. We are no longer at a point where we are incurring luxury costs. We stopped doing that about 5 years ago. And every single cost that we now, or expenditure that doesn't take place now, have a consequence. And it is really just postponing what is inevitable. And in the process, of course, your risk profile increases, and you're also at risk of other risks materializing. Briefly, a glance at SABC at a glance. You can see in the graph on the left how the performance of the organization is envisaged to change over time. Our amortization, that's the investment in programs, film and sports rights, is less than what is ideal. And you can see in the last graph how we are planning to increase our audience ratings. This just summarizes what I've already said with going concern as materialized. We are self-funded, 83% from revenue generated through commercial activities, of which advertising and sponsorship makes up 70%. So if anything goes wrong in those line items, we are in deep trouble. And we then also speak to the fact that our audiences have, of course, over the past 19 years reduced by nearly 40%. Rest of the items I won't go in. Cost of mandate, our chair did refer to it. The cost of content mandate amounts to about 1.7 billion rand. The unfunded portion after accounting for television licenses and the government grant is just this side of 800 million per annum or in the next financial year. And if you add to that the cost of distributing that mandate investment, you very quickly see a 2 billion rand bill. The rest is really just the income statement and the balance sheet in its traditional form. CEO, if it's okay with you, I'll just briefly make a few comments around the stopgap measures. Is that fine, or did you want to deal with it?
Do we maybe back to the chair of the committee? Do we still have time to go through them?
You can summarize in 5 minutes. We had many breaks, so I've tried to cover it.
Thank you.
Okay. So, thank you,
ahead,
CEO and chair of the committee. What I tried to do when I prepared this is share with you the forecast in June 2023 versus the forecast at the end of February. And you can at least see that with our revenue improvement plan at the time, our cost deferment plan that was developed, we did manage to claw back about 500 million rand of the loss that we envisaged projected for this financial year back then. Our expenditure target, the cost deferment target, has actually been exceeded, but in the revenue space, we didn't achieve necessarily all the initiatives we planned for. This is what we presented to yourselves in October 2023. You can see the various statuses indicated there. Just a brief note on television licenses. This revenue stream has struggled the whole year, and it continues to underperform. And that despite the fact that we had a number of new and innovative initiatives that we implemented in the last part of the financial year. You can see all of them have been implemented. except for the right of prescribed debt. Everything else did go into fruition, but unfortunately, we are unable to see that the results necessarily at the collection line. This is the cost deferment plan. Really, I took the forecasted numbers and just compared the main line items, and you can see some comments on how we achieved it. Whether it is in marketing costs, for example, the delay in bringing a new agency on board, we still don't have it on board. We were working on an ad hoc and as required basis. In employee cost, we had a moratorium for about 5 months, and we continue to have about, I think currently it's a 20% vacancy rate. And the rest is a combination of just postponements, as I say, austerity. And at the top, program film and sports rights, we did manage to claw back a little bit on that, but we also had the unexpected and unbudgeted expenditure on the major sports properties, that though they were commercial successes and they were funded by sponsorships. This is just summary of all kinds of initiatives that's been in place in the past 7 months to be able to manage the situation and continue to not reach our day zero of June 2023. I mentioned the long-term capital plan, the various operational expenditure I touched on. We also embarked on a contract review in the supply chain space. 2 main departments were part of this activity, technology and real estate, and we did manage to get some savings from there. We continue with cost containment under the typical themes like treasury, always pursue, and last but not least, and setting us up for the medium to longer term, is the development of our new strategy. We have also, because we've been unable to secure any funding from our shareholder and National Treasury, despite their best efforts, we are exploring some other initiatives. Some might be maybe a year or 2 away, but we continue to look at any possibilities that we may have. And we are working closely with Treasury in this respect. And that is it, CEO. I will hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. I will hand back to, thank you for the presentation. I will hand back to our chair. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, GCO and GCFO. Chair, in the interest of time, I will just hand back to you to take the meeting forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now, like I said, we'll just be strict with your minutes here. I was told it will be TGG Sharembe presenting the Oversight task team report. So you have 30 minutes max, so that we allow members to engage before the Deputy Minister leaves the platform. So it's 13:11. At 41, I'll stop if you're not done. You can save us the minutes. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and greetings to you, to the honorable members, as well as the Deputy Minister and the colleagues on the platform. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the work of the Oversight Task Team on the SAPO BRP process. The Oversight Task Team is made up or is constituted of the DCDT, which is the department, the National Treasury, as well as SAPO, which is represented by the BRPs. So we have prepared this, it's a very short presentation, Chairperson. It's going to save time indeed. We have prepared this presentation, and as you correctly noted, on top of that, we submitted the annexure, which updates on the work of the BRPs. And that annexure is for the information to the committee. And unless required, we may not present the annexure as you directed, Chairperson. If we move on to the next slide, then So as a matter of a background, I think it's now a common knowledge that SAPO received an allocation of 2.4 billion from National Treasury, which was in terms of Section 4 of the Second Adjustments Appropriation Act. And on the 26th of June, 2023, last year, the Minister of Finance issued a list of conditions attached to the appropriation for SAPO and the department to comply with. And it was said that deviations to these conditions will result in irregular expenditure as defined in Section 1 of the Public Finance Management Act. The Minister of Finance further set out a list of conditions, and in those conditions, including that an oversight committee will be established, as I have just indicated, including a National Treasury, DCDT, and SAPO, to monitor on a quarterly basis progress made by SAPO against these conditions. And it said failure to adhere to the conditions may result in the withholding of the disbursements. So a joint oversight committee has been established in line with the conditions of the Minister of Finance. The committee is led by our Director General as the chairperson, and I sit in as the chairperson when the Director General is not available to run those meetings. Committee members comprise DCDT officials and 6 officials from the National Treasury as nominated by the Director General of National Treasury. The BRPs of SAPO also form part of the committee, and their role is mainly to submit compliance reports to the DCDT and National Treasury and present progress status to the Oversight Committee on how they are meeting the funding conditions. We also receive progress status updates on the business rescue process as a matter of fact. And Chairperson, as you have requested, we will be submitting these updates to the committee on a monthly basis. Next slide, please. So what were the conditions attached to the 2.4 billion by National Treasury or by the Minister of Finance? One, the condition was that the 2.4 billion must be utilized as part of the business rescue process. It must be noted that at the time that the allocation was made, SAPO was under provisional liquidation, and government was still at the point of applying to court to place SAPO under business rescue. And therefore, the condition was relevant in the sense that the funding was only to be utilized after the business rescue process has been approved or a court order has been granted to that effect. Another condition was that SAPO was to submit to National Treasury and the department all the reports that had been produced in relation to financial misconduct, and that SAPO should submit those reports dating back from 1st of April 2019 to Q3 of 2022-23 on how the people who were identified as being responsible for such misconduct have been dealt with by the 31st of December 2023. SAPO was also to provide confirmation that it will not pay any bonuses or salary increases whilst they were implementing whilst they were receiving funding for government in the form of recapitalization funding. SAPO was also required to provide a detailed report on the causes of financial collapse of the entity, both internal and external factors, and explain why the previous turnaround plans have failed to be successfully implemented. The department, this was a condition specific to the department. The department was to appoint an independent evaluator to evaluate all the properties listed by SAPO for disposal prior to such disposal taking place, and provide progress report on the appointment process by 15 September 2023 and conclude the process by 31 December 2023. The sixth condition was that then the Oversight Committee would be established, comprising National Treasury, the Department, and SAPO, to monitor progress on a quarterly basis on progress made by SAPO against these conditions. And I have indicated that the failure to adhere to these conditions would result in the withholding of the disbursement. The compliance reports to be submitted to National Treasury, that was the last condition, was to be made 5 days prior to the scheduled committee meetings to allow parties to thoroughly engage with the contents of the report. And it is incumbent on SAPO and the department to notify National Treasury in advance to the due date should there be any delays in the submission that will be encountered. Next slide, please. So in the following slides, then I am going to be taking the committee through in terms of the status or the progress status relative to each condition set. With respect to the condition that the 2.4 billion funding should be utilized as part of the business rescue process if granted by the court, indeed, the department did not release any part of the funding of the 2.4 billion rand funding to SAPO up until after the SAPO was put into business rescue through the court order of 10 July 2023, and the joint business rescue practitioners also appointed by the court. So in terms of comment with respect to this condition, we are saying the condition was fully met. With respect to the condition that SAPO was to submit to National Treasury and the department all the reports pertaining to financial misconduct and dating back from 2019 to Q3 of 2022-23 on how people who were identified as being responsible for such misconduct have been dealt with. That was due by 31st December 2023. Indeed, as a way of progress status, SAPO BRPs have submitted the detailed information as required. However, our assessment is that more work still needs to be done in ensuring effective consequence management. For example, a total of 89 cases of irregular expenditure that have been assessed. While some disciplinary proceedings were undertaken on some cases, on others, SAPO reported that nothing could be done as the employees have left the employ of the entity. So we are saying in terms of the feedback on this condition, it is an ongoing monitoring of these cases of misconduct and disciplinary cases. And the report has been provided on the financial misconduct. SAPO is still to finalize the process of effective consequence management. Next slide, please. With respect to the condition about the confirmation that no bonus payments and salary increases will be implemented, including historical commitments whilst the entity is receiving government recapitalization funding, SAPO wrote to the department giving us written assurance that no bonuses indeed or salary increases, including historical commitments, would be paid whilst the entity is receiving government recapitalization funding. The confirmation letter was submitted on the 4th of August 2023. So the condition has been met in terms of the letter having been submitted, but we continue to monitor that in the financials that we receive from the organization that indeed there are no such increases or bonuses being paid. The next condition related to the provision of a detailed report on the financial collapse of the entity and explain why the previous turnaround plans have failed to be successfully implemented. SAPO has, to that effect, submitted a detailed report on the causes of financial collapse. The BRPs have highlighted in detail their assessment of the factors that led to the financial distress in the business rescue plan. These have already been presented to the department, the minister, as well as the Joint Oversight Committee, which is the Department and National Treasurer, as part of the presentation of the rescue plan, which has been adopted by the SAPO creditors. The BRP findings are aligned with the supporting documents or information that were provided as part of the court papers to place SAPO into business rescue. In other words, what we are saying here is already as we approached the court to place SAPO under business rescue, we had already diagnosed the causes of financial distress of the post office, and those were included as part of the court papers. So we are saying the condition has been fully met. Next slide. With respect to the condition of appointing an independent evaluator to evaluate the properties listed for disposal prior to their disposal and providing progress report on the appointment process by a specific date, which was 15 September 2023, and concluding it by 31st December 2023. The progress status was initially provided to National Treasury in September 23 as required on DCDT's initiated procurement progress. However, that procurement process was discontinued altogether to avoid duplication and reinventing the wheel, as it was established that the BRPs had appointed an independent evaluator to conduct evaluation of all the SAPO properties, which included the properties that were already identified for disposal. The evaluation of the properties have been completed, and copies of the results are availed to both the department and National Treasury as required. So we are saying this condition has been fully met, but notwithstanding the fact that the condition is fully met, it is vital that the Post Office BRP provide ongoing update on how SAPO is planning to deal with the outcome of the evaluation, that is the actual disposal of the properties. The condition about formation or establishing the Oversight Committee, Chairperson, the Joint Oversight Committee was established as required by the department in consultation with National Treasury Director General. So the condition has been fully met and the committee meets regularly. The condition said it should meet on a quarterly basis, but we have managed to meet more than once in a quarter. Next slide, please. On the condition that the compliance reports are to be submitted to National Treasury at least 5 days prior to the scheduled committee meeting to allow for the parties to thoroughly engage with the contents of the report, and that it was incumbent on SAPO and the department to notify National Treasury in advance to the due date should there be any delays in submission that will be encountered. The department and SAPO BRPs have been working together to ensure that the compliance reports or meeting documents are provided in advance as required, and notifications get issued in case of changes in due dates or any delays encountered. So the condition is continually being met. Next slide. So the summary of progress or key milestones on business rescue is as follows. It will be recalled that a cabinet approved the application, or that the minister makes the application to put SAPO into business rescue, and that cabinet decision was on 24 May 2023. And indeed, an urgent application was lodged with the North Gauteng High Court on 30 May 2023 to place SAPO into business rescue. This application was ahead of the looming date of 1st of June 2023, which was the return date for the provisional liquidation court order. If we had not made that date, then on the 1st of June 2023, the court would have had made an order of a final liquidation on the post office on the 1st of June 2023. So the court hearing was then or took place on 7th of July 2023, and the court order was issued on 10 July 2023, effectively then placing the post office into business rescue and an interim appointment of the joint business rescue practitioners. The BRPs, which are Mr. Anush Ruplal and Mr. Juanito Martins Demons, were appointed, or their appointment was ratified by the Registrar of the Financial Services on 14 July 2023, and the majority of SAPO creditors on 24 July 2023, in line with the High Court order and the Companies Act requirements. SAPO has continued being operational, and the 2.4 billion rand initial funding allocation has been instrumental to support the business rescue process. The joint BRPs had until 30 November 2023 to develop and publish a business rescue plan, of which the draft rescue plan was published on 23 November 2023 for comments and voted for and adopted by the majority of SAPO creditors on 7 December 2023, in line with the Companies Act requirement. Next slide, please. So the BRPs have already started with the implementation of the business rescue plan. As the Deputy Minister already indicated in the opening remarks, as the Oversight Committee as well, we are cognizant that resources are still required to facilitate the full implementation of the business rescue plan. When we went to court, we estimated that would be to the tune of 3.8 billion rand, and that 3.8 billion rand has then been worked into the business rescue plan. There are ongoing engagements between National Treasury and the department with respect to this additional funding requirement. And finally then the presentation or the annexure that we have submitted covers matters relating to the operational matters to the implementation of the business rescue plan. I presume, Chairperson, we have utilized the full-time allocation. You will guide if there is a need to make the presentation on the annexed document, in which case then I would invite the BRPs to do so, but I will be guided by you, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Chair, we are done. Over to you.
No, thank you, Deputy Minister and the team. I'm now going to look at members, because I had indicated that we'll take questions so that the Deputy Minister is still here to also respond, as there was an indication of 2:30. So those who want to engage the two presentations, this is the opportunity to do so. Committee support, you will assist me on my side. I see for now Honorable Mazone send up. I'm not sure if I'm leaving any member behind.
That's the only hand, Chair.
Okay, so we'll now allow Honorable Mazone to proceed in the meantime.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, with your permission, can I keep my camera off for bandwidth?
Permission granted. Honorable member can proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, I was listening to the SAPO presentation with great interest because we know that the Minister left our meeting last week to go into an urgent meeting with Treasury as well as the business rescue practitioners. I wonder if the Deputy Minister would be kind enough to inform us as to what that meeting was about, as we've now heard from Treasury that there is absolutely no chance of the Post Office getting the 4 billion rand bailout which they've requested, which is also one of the terms for the business rescue practice conditions. Now, Chair, I do want to point out that I'm not really in the mood for us to be taken around in circles on this. I've been in court during the business rescue practitioners hearing their application. I was also there when a huge amount of creditors arrived in the court to co-join. So I've seen it all firsthand. So I really just want to know exactly where do we stand? What is being asked of Treasury? Why is the Minister meeting with Treasury? And is there any indication whatsoever that a very strange anomaly will occur by Treasury granting any such bailout to the South African Post Office, given that we've already passed all the budgets until the next financial year? Chair, then regarding the SABC, firstly, I must say that, you know, and Chair, I say this a lot and I don't mean to be boring, but, you know, I've sat on this committee a few times in my career, which dates back to 2009. We were talking about the analog switch off then. We're now in the year 2024, and I'm wondering, you know, why are we still talking about the risks that could arise and putting into place mitigating plans? We've had 14 years that we knew that this switch from analog to digital was happening. And I think, you know, we deserve a better answer than hearing that mitigating plans are being put into place. You know, South Africa is paying this border a salary after all. We expect these plans to be in place already. Chair, then content and inflation. This confuses me completely. I pay my TV license. I think I'm one of the few South Africans that does. And I've got to tell you, it really irritates me when I put on the TV and, you know, someone in the room says, "Oh, this show's older than you are," bearing in mind I'll turn 45 in a month. So I want to know exactly what content are we paying for, because all I can see is a mass overuse and overshowing of previously bought shows that have been in the recording basket that the SABC has, some for over almost 40 years now. And you're certainly not going to gain any new content or any new advertisers or any new viewers when you're constantly showing irrelevant old content and re-showing this content. Then, Chair, I noticed with some interest that there was a radical shift in programming times, and there was a real sort of public outcry on social media regarding the swap around of times for certain shows that were very instrumental in terms of language, geographical representation, as well as popularity. Now, I'm wondering exactly who comes up with the schedule. Has the schedule in any way improved advertising stream income that the SABC is receiving? Or has there been a sort of flat line or even a decline in revenue coming in from advertising? Chair, then let's talk about this SABC bill. Now, I think that this SABC bill is a complete waste of time. And I've said this openly, and I don't mince my words about it, and I'm not going to mince my words about it today. Chair, this bill seeks to do, in my opinion, what it seeks to do and what it actually will do in real fact is it's left up to your imagination, because it certainly doesn't indicate in any which way how it will create financial sustainability for the state broadcaster. It's the national broadcaster, should I say? Call that a Freudian slip. But Chair, there is nothing in there that to me would indicate the necessity of that bill having been passed now. I still maintain that the bill is undesirable and we should send it back as undesirable. Out of all the submissions that we received, only 3 people in any way had something positive to say about the bill, which I think is a dastardly show of how poor this bill was crafted, how poorly this bill was crafted. So, Chair, if someone at the SABC could give me just 2 or 3 reasons why they think this bill is going to help them in any which way, because, Chair, let me tell you what's going to happen. So the 7th Parliament is going to come into sitting. The SABC board will appear before this committee in whichever shape or form it takes at that point, and they will blame the fact that the SABC bill wasn't passed in this term on the failure that they're experiencing then. So let's just stop that from happening now by letting the SABC board just give us a few reasons why they think that SABC bill should have been passed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mazone. Any other member who want to make a contribution? If not, let's then get the responses. I think from the responses, I'll be able to see if there's a need to get back or get some way forward. Deputy Minister would be guided by herself. I want to respond to the points made.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ask the SABC first to come in for the questions that have been raised with them, and the department to come in, and I'll come back. I don't know if there's an issue that the business rescue practitioners would want to respond to, but I'll come in at the end. I don't know whether the chair of Group CO wants to respond to that. But I think on the SABC bill, maybe the SABC should not, they may probably comment, but the bill was introduced by the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, and if there's any questions to be responded to on the desirability of the bill, it's going to have to be done by ourselves, the department and the ministry. So the SABC may comment if they want to on the bill, but ultimately I think this is a question that will be taken by us. The chair or Group CO, you can come in, and then the DG, or maybe let's say DDG, Shilembe, business rescue practitioners, if you want to come in, and then DG and myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you, Chair of the Portfolio Committee. We will start with the ASO question. I'm going to ask our Group Executive for Digital Technology, who's currently our acting COO, to come in and talk about where we are with the ASO. I think just before I hand over to him, we identify the risks, because in a situation like this, it's imperative for us to identify the risks. It doesn't in any way mean there is no planning from our side, but I'm going to ask him to come in because he's been very close to this and is leading us in terms of that, the ASO switched off itself. So Lungile, if you can jump in on the ASO question.
Thank you very much, Group CEO for the SABC. Good afternoon, Chair of the committee. Good afternoon to the committee members. Good afternoon to the Deputy Minister, the Director General, as well as all the colleagues on the platform. This is a very pertinent question that Member Mazoni is asking, because it is something that has been occupying the minds of the SABC for quite a while, which is the analog switch off. Really, analog switch off is the last leg of the broadcast digital migration program. The first legs is around the identification of the indigent households. Then the second is around the actual installations of the set-top boxes, maybe before that, the procurement of the set-top boxes, and then the installation of those set-top boxes. And then after that, then you can then go ahead and switch off any of those analog television transmitters. What I think the SABC could have done from the past would have been maybe not to rely more on that process, because sometimes that process didn't, work out the way the SABC had anticipated, especially the set-top box installations. But even that, as I just said, is a function of the registrations which the South African Post Office was handling until recently. It was also augmented by SITA through the online registration program. So what maybe the SABC could have done from 2009, as I think Member Mazoni is talking about, would have been maybe to say, let us have our own platform, which at the time we relied more on this TTT platform to actually start making waves. Unfortunately, it hasn't really translated to any of the financial benefits for the SABC in the last few years. And it made the SABC to lose some audiences. As the committee knows, audiences in broadcasting is the currency. And once you lose audiences, you then lose the advertisers and to a certain extent, the sponsors as well. And as the chair of the SABC board, as well as the group CEO have indicated, the SABC is reliant on the market for its revenues. About 83% of its revenues come from, commercial sales. And what we've identified after the first phase of the analog switch off is that it has made the SABC to lose a lot of audiences, and that has significantly compromised its financial position. So this time around, the SABC is trying, and it's frantically trying to put together its own satellite platform that will then be in a position to, whenever we're migrating these audiences from analog TV, we then have a catchment area for them if the installations for the indigent households is not happening. So this strategy is not an easy one, but you start with it about a year or two ago. And now we are in the process of trying to implement it. Thanks, Chair, and back to you, Group CEO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pinza. And then I'll come in and just talk about the programming changes. I think what's important is that we do go through program changes, and they are really influenced by issues such as audience ratings, advertising revenue, viewer preferences, etc. So there's quite a lot of insight that goes behind program changes that take place. We do recognize that it might not necessarily hold sway with certain audiences, but unfortunately, it's imperative for us to ensure that we do address the insights that we have, hence the market intelligence that we have, to ensure that at best, at the balance of probabilities, we do have a large chunk of audience ratings. So that is really what's happening with program changes. It's not something that's knee-jerk. It's something that is well considered and thoroughly thought out. And we have addressed the issue that it does happen that it might be not acceptable to certain audiences. We've been very responsive on that front to try and explain why we do the program changes that we do. So I hope that satisfies the question. And then the issue of content inflation, the reality is content. There is different contents that we acquire from an SABC perspective. If you look at the big competition for content in South Africa, local content is very important. And SABC is a very big investor when it comes to content in South Africa. And then at the same time, we do buy content that is older. And hence, in my presentation, I spoke about the fact that SABC has archives and a content catalog that is global. So it will happen that at some point, if you look at the TV, you'll find that we are playing Rambo from whatever age it's coming from. But the reality is that content does go through a content cycle. And that is what we also practice from an SABC perspective. And it's also influenced by audience ratings, etc. But what's important is something that I need to point out is that we do struggle from an SABC perspective because we just don't have the funding to compete on the content front. And that is why we might end up having over-indexing when it comes to older content than, for example, the likes of the Netflixes and the Amazons of the world who have war chests that we don't have. So it's really a fine balance from our side to try and ensure that we get content that is still compelling, that is interesting to our viewers, but also balance the fact that we do have our financial challenges whereby we can't really compete in the open market like the other players are competing. And then on the SABC bill, I think that has been answered by the Deputy Minister. SABC has given its input into the bill. It's on record, and I think for that would be the answer for that. Back to you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Is there anything that DDG Shilembe or the BRPs would want to say?
Nothing on my side, DM. I thought the questions were relating to the SABC in the main. Thank you.
There was a question for SAPO. Is there anything that the BRPs would want to say?
As Deputy Minister?
Chair?
I was just saying that the question in relation to the BRP process was with regard to the money and that the minister was to go to a meeting. So it relates to a meeting the minister was to have, whether this matter is now settled. So
okay.
Not on the presentation.
Okay, no, thanks, Chair. I think the DG can respond and then I'll come in. DG, if you want to say something.
A very good afternoon to the Honourable Chair, to the Honourable members on the platform. Chair, with your permission, pardon me. With your permission, I'd like to switch off my camera, if I may.
Permission granted, you proceed.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon once again. Chair, I think Honourable Mazoni asked a number of questions which I'd like to also add. The first relates to the meeting between the Minister of Finance as well as the Minister regarding the business review process. So honourable members, the reason for the meeting, as you would know, that the government was then the interested party that then went to defend the provisional liquidation, and the options that were availed to it at the time was then to place SAPO under business review. And therefore, as government in that undertaking, and I think Honourable Mazoni has indicated as what the courts have been saying, government took an undertaking to then fund the business rescue process. To this end, there was an initial 2.4 billion, the report of which we've presented to this House this morning through DDG Shilembe. Then the second was then to say the additional funding of 3.8 up to 3.8 billion is what then government is also then committed to. That was in terms of the discussion between the two ministers. Honourable Mazoni is correct to then say, in as far as the budget and also the budget speech presented, there was no reference to the bailout funding. However, we note this as therefore as a special process and a special dispensation. Honorable Mazoni, I think, and members of Parliament, you would know that there has been such in the past. Either there are various options that government is exploring in as far as then the funding itself. I do have my colleagues on the platform, though they were not part of that meeting, but we've been in discussions. The options relate to whether there is a provision for special adjustment to be made. The Minister of Finance main call in the meeting that we held was then to say we should explore the various options. The implementation plan stemming from the business rescue plan, the minister has then, the ministers directed us to then say, one of the aspects or the streams also talked to the issue with regard to partnerships. Are there therefore avenues in as far as us looking in the business rescue plan, when you then talk the investment in whether it's in logistics or e-commerce, if you're looking in terms of the property segment and the unbundling, including also the investment in terms of IT systems, the business rescue as part of then the plan should explore partnerships. There was also a request for us then to break down in terms of details of the actual implementation plan itself, to be able to have a full line of sight exactly in terms of the milestones that will be related to that. That meeting it has, and I must also indicate to the honourable members on the platform that even prior to us going to when cabinet, taking the matter to cabinet, the two ministers were tasked in terms of overseeing this process. So it is only therefore precise that every now and again through the task team we do provide feedback channels to those ministers. At this juncture, as the most important, the most critical issue is therefore the funding itself and the disbursement, and the time period to which then the funding will be distributed, and that is the discussions that are still unfolding. There is going to be a follow-up meeting, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, to which then we are then, because we've been asked to unpack the implementation plan, we will then take forward the second aspect of the discussions, which will then be the funding proposals which we had prepared for the ministers. Thank you. Now, if I may continue through you, Chair, with regards to the question that was posed, I think Honourable Mazoni also asked about the analog switch off. Although the question was directed to the SABC, I need to indicate that the program itself is obviously the custodian again of government through the department, and obviously historical departments, obviously, but in terms of succession line, it's still therefore lies as the responsibility of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. So yes, the policy itself, if you would know, the initial first policy was in 2008, and therefore it was reviewed in 2012 and 2015. Gave rise in terms of the various aspects that my colleague from SABC alluded to, and there has been various key stakeholders involved in the project. As you would know, honourable members, the one of the first delays was on the litigation that we faced. That was over a period of almost 2 years in the courts with regards to the encryption. That obviously added to the delay of the two years. Yes.
Can I request that maybe I think that question has been responded to on the A, so maybe we must leave it that. I'm just worried about my own time because We did
Oh,
brief
yes.
the
My
committee on
apologies.
the broadcasting digital migration, and I think they are aware of that. Thank you, DG.
Thank you, dear.
Chair, thank you. Honorable members, I think just to maybe add on what the Director General has been saying on the meeting between the Minister of Finance and the Minister of DCDT. That engagement, Honorable Mazzoni, is part of the ongoing engagements between the two colleagues in Cabinet to try and find ways of funding the additional requirements to implement the business rescue plan. And I'm certain that once the discussions have been concluded, they will then pronounce on the way forward that has been agreed upon. For now is part of the ongoing engagement between the two colleagues in Cabinet. We have said it before that in terms of the business rescue plan that has been approved, there is an additional requirement needed. It's public knowledge that if this additional allocation is not found anywhere, either through partnerships, either through the fiscus, it will be difficult for the business rescue practitioners to implement the plan. So basically, this plan may be dead in the waters. With regard to the SABC bill in particular, I'm advised, Honorable Mazzoni, that in the previous meeting of the committee, this issue around the desirability of the Act has been adequately addressed by the committee through the chair. And indeed, the committee did confirm that it is desirable, the introduction of the bill. But unfortunately, because of time, the committee is not able to process the bill. So the issue of desirability is a matter that has already been discussed and agreed to by the committee. But just to say, maybe we might have to refresh members and do another presentation on the introduction of the bill. We thought that we have done that before, but it's quite clear that probably we may not be seeing things the same way. We said to the committee in the past when we introduced the bill that this introduction of the SABC bill is in response to both the domestic and the global shifts in the broadcasting environment. That the bill that we had before is not adequate to respond to the current demands around the broadcasting, shifting broadcasting landscape, which has now been affected by the introduction of the streaming services, Netflix and all of that, and therefore it's necessary to reposition the SABC to be able to respond to those global and domestic shifts. But also it is necessary that we Chair, I think Honorable Gumbu, if he can switch off his mic. Thank you very much. We said, Chair, when we introduced the bill, that we are seeking to introduce a mechanism to fund particularly the public service mandate of the bill. You know that the previous dispensation was that there is TV licenses, which every household that owns TV set must pay the licenses. But the collection of these licenses has not been very adequate. And there's never been sufficient instruments to allow the SABC to collect the licensing. And therefore, we know that we have been proposing a different mechanism to collect from the households. I think it is public knowledge that the original proposal by DCDT has always been to introduce a household levy. And of course, it's also public knowledge that the Treasury wants this to be explored, and therefore
So it's on my side, Deputy Minister. Can hear you.
I'll send a message, Chairperson.
Is it on my side?
It's not on your side, Chair. I'll send them a message. Thank you.
It's everyone, Chair. No one can hear.
my apologies.
We lost you,
members.
Deputy Minister.
Yes, I got cut off. I don't know what was the issue, whether it was my connectivity here or what was happening. But I hope you can hear me now, Chair. Let me just go towards a conclusion.
Proceed.
Yes, I was saying, Chair, because of the request and the fact that this had to be certified, so we had to concede to the revision of that clause to call for the commissioning of some kind of a study and to finalize this thing within the period of 3 years. But of course, this is a matter that will be discussed. It's possible that it might change or it might not change. This formulation might find its expression in the bill or in the final bill that will be approved by Parliament. But of course, there's nothing also that is stopping the committee from saying, no, we don't agree with this formulation. We would want Treasury and the department to come and motivate why this should be the case. So this is subject to engagement. We have not seen, or let me say, I have not seen the comments from the members of the public. And I wouldn't say who has commented positively, who has not commented positively. Obviously, part of the lawmaking process is that the public will make their comments, will be invited to come and engage. We will agree with some of their comments, some of their submissions we may not agree with. It's in the ordinary course of processing legislation. So you don't say that because 5 people don't agree, therefore you abandon the process. But you engage with the process until the very last. So I can go on and on, Chair. We know that we're trying to separate, and the bill proposes a separation of commercial and public. And in that regard, it proposes the establishment or the appointment of a commercial, the board that will be dealing with the commercial aspects of the SABC and the process on how that board should be appointed. So where we are quite convinced, Chair, that that bill is not only desirable, but that bill is going to go to a greater extent to help us to try and reposition the SABC, the corporation as it is. So that's what I can say, Chair, to the questions that have been raised by the members. Of course, during the processing of the bill, we'll respond to the comments that have already been received, and we'll respond to each of them and express our view as it relates to the bill, Chairperson. But otherwise, those are the comments that have been raised, and I think that we don't have to belabor the point. Thank you very much, Chair. I hope that all the other questions have been responded to. On the broadcasting digital migration, Chair, the reason why I asked that the DG should not take us through, I know that this committee has been briefed on many occasions on the processes and the progress that we're making on the broadcasting digital migration and the analog switch off. And the SABC has always been part of us. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister and the team. And thank questions that would have been raised and the responses thereof. I think in trying to take a way forward on the two items presented, I think the first point really is to understand, honorable members and the ministry, that we have been dealing with these matters before us. So in some instances, questions may have not arisen now, but there would have been questions before and responses given. So what is before us is an accumulation of all those getting to this point of the update that you are getting. So that you understand where my summary then would come from. Even in the question on SAPO, in the way Honorable Mazone approached that question, was really to say we've been engaging on this matter, but there was this one in particular where the minister requested to be excused from the meeting because they were to prepare for a meeting with finance. So it was more to say we've been updated on a number of these, but this one may not have been updated on. And I think the responses we got were really about that. So like I say, I'm preparing you for the summary so that you understand the background to the summary that is out of this journey that we have been in. Quite clearly, from a point of the SABC policy interventions, I think the committee has motivated why it agreed to leave the bill to the 7th Parliament SABC bill. Not just because of the time that we may not be able to present the bill, but that time is linked to meaningful participatory democracy, so that you allow space for public engagement. But that there were also concerns from the committee on some of the clauses as the bill stands, which may need redrafting, and that redrafting may also have to be tested legally. But of course, when you talk to financial or funding model, it may be that National Treasury had an input on this. And for whatever reasons, they would have come to advise on a 3-year or 36 months period for a minister to develop such a funding model, consult on it, bring it back. But from a committee point of view, given the current challenges in the SABC, probably you will not have an SABC in 3 years unless there's intervention. So that at least is understood. It's not just a time factor, but how that time relates to the work that needs to be done. So I would not want us to then hash the discussion again on the bill itself. So I think you've adequately responded, Deputy Minister, on that it was introduced, we understood it. We dealt even with the meaning of desirability and so on. So in the last meeting. But clearly, the next parliament will have to deal with this as part of the policy interventions that are being made on the SABC. But in the intervening period, the Minister of TCTT must really finalize the white paper on audio and audiovisual content services, because that's not really parliament. And that serves also as the basis to respond to some of the things that have been raised about ambiguity in definition and all that, and contradictions between the white paper and what the bill proposes. So that should be an intervention that gets looked at, because broader consultation on that has been done with all key stakeholders. The made inputs. The point is really to get it to finality. So if you can use the period to finalize that, it will help a great deal in addressing some of the things that could be addressed. I'm sure if you still have time, Deputy Minister, you'd want to come to also another point, that some of the things in the SABC relates to the regulator, ICASA, on whether we're addressing those, including addressing the leadership question in ICASA, because now you have a full complement of ICASA. We need to know who's the chair of ICASA, because now ICASA is being taken, I've seen in one article, but taken to court on the regulations for the elections. How that will will be implemented when it's contested. You need an ICASA with leadership that is able to take these matters even beyond the election period. So at least from the side of Parliament, our legacy report will show that we've done everything to stabilize entities, but that is not within our competence. We will not be able to deal with. But those that need to deal with must deal with it and give confidence to the country that we have stabilized and not leave the matter hanging. But like I'm saying, if you still have time, surely you'll take committee into confidence that those matters have now been finalized since Parliament dealt with them. But you need those elements, at least in the intervening period, of giving assurance, white paper and all that, and that ICASA, where it needs to support the SABC, is able to do that. I think the issue about the financial sustainability of the SABC, I think for me, the important point about this report, there's a slide that shows the chain. I think it was presented by the CFO. That's the first slide, which shows graphically how the declines from the audience and all that would have happened up until you get to the COVID and post-COVID. So, which then tells you that the problem has not been at a particular stage, but as some decisions get made, how they would have affected the audience and all that. Of course, ASO is also one of those. But they go further to indicate that the problem you have is that elsewhere in the world, including those democracies that people praise to have given freedom, independence, and so on. But in as far as the public service mandate is concerned, they put a lot of money into that in order to achieve that education, that information, that entertainment that they want their citizens to have from broadcasting. So I think it's important to look at that. And at this point, there's a better clarity even with numbers, because as a committee over time, we've always asked about quantification of what you said is unfunded within the public service mandate. So we now have an idea of what you talk about. For that matter, I think the immediate thing to do, which will not wait for the bill, because it can be done, is that separation between what is commercial from a point of accountability, as well as what is public service mandate that you're talking about. So that could be still be done now. So that you see whether indeed what we assumed is potential of the commercial to subsidize, and for that reason, that's the reason probably there's not been funding. You can be able to see real numbers, whether we're able to achieve it or not. Yes, look at the licensing. We already know what is the status on that, including interventions you've already made about debt collection and so on, whether they've given you the results you would want. At least that information is available. With that then taken into account, once you make that separation, the DCDT and National Treasury, as we speak, must really ensure that the public service mandate is funded until you have a funding model that's in place. Otherwise, it doesn't help to declare it a public service mandate when in financial terms, that commitment is not there. So that commitment must be shown. And unfortunately, it has to happen now if you are to save the SABC until you have a proper funding model that is sustainable going forward. So in the absence of that, and you want to still pursue a public service mandate, then you have to fund that. The DCDT minister, I think as it relates to the commercial side of things, the Honorable Mazoni has put it that even from a programming point of view, for those who have got the time, not in sittings and so on, as you open with a sense of that I'm going to see something new, detailed, but it's a repeat. We've watched it many times. Because the time to take up compelling content may not be there because of, firstly, your legal framework and so on, right? So once you make that separation, the DCDT minister must utilize legal instruments, because there are legal instruments available to deal with this part of the time it takes to get content to a point that, as it happened in the past, by the time you air it, it's almost 2 years down the line. And there's everything new in the market, and nobody would want to really see what you're putting up. And you've spent money into it. Whereas if there would have been that exemption on certain things as provided for in law, then that compelling content could have been taken up on time. So that's what I think the minister should explore. So, but of course we must make sure that, and this is the last point for me on the SABC, and Deputy Minister, as I raise this, it is not because there is no commitment to make sure that we deliver an election and that there's a budget to do so. And I want you to understand it, and the team, that this is raised in support of the work you need to do. That every effort has to be done to make sure that the SABC is able to perform its duties pre and post elections. And this includes mitigation on the issue of the Centec debt or signal distribution issue going forward. Because the experience has been that sometimes there will be commitment on those that must deliver or pronounce on those commitments. Probably either whilst you are talking or after you've spoken, something else happens to the contrary, which undermines that commitment that has been made. So we have to do everything possible to ensure that the elections are delivered, and post that, that the SABC is still able to perform its functions of informing society, of educating society, and as well as entertaining society in that way. So the last thing you would want to see, it's a problem in the middle of a critical period, and then only learn at that point that actually even Centec could not take it further than what they could do, because then the interventions were taking time. So that it's important to look at, so that as members, when we go and do work, as we get to constituency period, we don't have to be asked questions as to whether from our oversight, we never saw an inherent risk imposed by the signal distribution unresolved matter. So it's raised in that context, not to say that we are not confident that money is available and all that, but it's just to reaffirm the point that it has to happen. The last point is on the BRP issue. I think because members have got the attachment, what I call it the annexure. It's got dates that have already passed and so on. I want to suggest members that as a way of summarizing this, that you still have an opportunity to ask further questions. If you have further questions, and do that in writing. As we said, we'll be briefed monthly. It may not be in a portfolio committee format, but just communication to also members. So, but those questions should be properly coordinated, so that at least the office of the chair does see and be able to follow up those clarities you may have asked for. But members, I thought we would spend time on this part. This question that there may not be money to implement the plan. It's a very important question, because that question indeed should be answered. What if, that's how the Deputy Minister put it, what if the partnership doesn't materialize at the time you need to implement? And what if from the fiscals you are unable to get that money? What then happens? Because this has been through a court process. So everything else has to be done then to make sure that we do not get to that point. Because in the oversight work of this committee, we would have asked for intervention at a particular time on SAPO. And that intervention delayed. By the time it came, SAPO could not breathe on its own, because already there was provisional liquidation issues that came on the way, which therefore meant that the intended purpose of bringing that injection, which was to, in the main, help with the implementation of a turnaround strategy, whilst you service your debts, would not happen. And we're on this part now. So would need to be real updated also on that question specifically, whether this works or not. And if it doesn't, surely there must be an alternative. What do you do? We can't wait until there's a crisis when we could see it coming in case this doesn't happen. Worst case scenario plan. What do you do in that scope? So would need those questions to be looked at. But again, the underlying question would be, what is in the presentation? The presentation says BRP confirmed that you were able to present the court, which means there was capacity also internal to know where the problems are. Probably the difference would have been the speed and how things get to be done to resolve it. So in finding that solution, we also need to look at that the BRP is an intervention for a particular period, as to whether the institution is built in a way that it participates in this turnaround, such that once the BRP is gone, the institution is able to live beyond intervention. I think it is the same question we've raised with CITA. that you do not make the space a site of intervention, but the institution must live beyond that and be able to discharge its mandate, right? So, but as I say, we should not close the space for members to put questions of clarity once they've gone through the documents properly, so that the updates that come can also look at those questions that members would have put up, but they should be properly coordinated so that the office of the chair will also know and be able to make follow-ups on behalf of the committee, such that members could get the necessary responses. But as I said, Minister, I will respond if you want to, but we are really just reaffirming certain things that we think should happen in the intervening period, which may not need the 7th Parliament only to look at. That will be the summary, honourable members, given that we have discussed these matters time and again in the committee. But I see that the Deputy Minister wants to speak. DM?
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't want to belabor the points and waste members' time, but I just wish to comment on you have asked specific question, Chair, which I think you deserve a response from our side. On the issue of ICASA, for instance, I just want to say, Chair, that firstly, let's thank yourself as the committee for having processed the letter of nomination from the minister. If you recall that the minister sent a letter to the speaker, ultimately this committee processed, and the House sitting of the National Assembly on the 29th of February approved the report of the Portfolio Committee to support Mr. Mutibi Ramusi as the member of ICASA. We subsequently received the letter from the acting speaker on the 11th of March 2024, and that letter was then processed through the memo to the minister. So very soon, the department will be publishing the appointment of Mr. Mutibi Ramusi as the member of ICASA, as supported by Parliament, and the minister will make a determination on who is going to be the chair. So that is the decision of the minister. I think we must give space to the minister to take that decision. But I can guarantee you that the gazette that will be coming out very soon will contain that determination and decision of the minister on who is going to be the chair of ICASA. This is going to happen very soon, Chair, that I can guarantee you, because that memo is already processed as a matter of urgency. It's on the desk of the minister as we speak. On the SABC, Chair, you also raised an issue around the debt that is owing by the SABC to Centec. I just want to say, Chair, that we agree with you that all efforts need to be made to ensure that the SABC is able to cover the elections, both the preparations and the post-elections period. The SABC should have enough capacity to be able to do that. And that's why there are engagements which are facilitated by the minister to make sure that this issue of the debt of Centec by SABC is attended to. I just want to say, Chair, that I think we've said this in the past, that this debt is becoming unsustainable. to Sentech. In fact, some of the colleagues who are in Sentech have been telling me that for the first time in the history of that entity, they have been owed so much. I think the debt has exceeded almost 900. As we speak, it's almost going towards 1 billion. Now, 1 billion that is owed to Sentech, which, by the way, has got a budget of about annual budget of about 1.6 billion. That is very significant. But there are engagements currently that's taking place, because at some point legal correspondences had to be exchanged between Sentech and the SABC. But that matter has been attended to. That facilitation that has been done by the Minister of DCDT has already been briefed. There is a concrete proposal that is being shared with Sentech as we speak. So we hope that that matter will be resolved. You'd recall, Chair, some couple of years back, I think at the beginning of this parliament, it is this committee that has processed the issue of the bailout from the fiscus. And at a point when this bailout came, the debt owed by the SABC to Sentech was just above 500 million. It was in no way near what it is currently, which is a lot. I'm raising this because this is public knowledge, Chair. I think there's no need for us to sugarcoat these difficulties that we're experiencing. I did say that the SABC is going through these financial challenges simply because of a number of things. But key to that is the unfunded mandate, unfunded public service mandate. I can tell you that the SABC gets less than 3% of its revenue from the fiscus, and yet it is expected to carry almost 30% of its content that it commissions. Is that which is mandated by, which is supposed to be public service mandated. So you see that there is a mismatch there, and as a result of this, it's impacting on the financial viability of the broadcaster. I'm not saying that is the only thing. There are other things also that needs to be attended to. Like, as you said, compelling content, which is one of the things, because it's a battle of the eyeballs. If you're not coming up with content compelling enough for the viewers are going to switch the channels and watch other channels. So that is also something that the SABC is working on. But going forward, we need to find a way, Chair, of dealing with this the issue of the cost of signal distribution. There must be a mechanism that we come to, hopefully as part of processing of the SABC bill, to deal with this issue, because it continues to be a problem. And if not attended to, both entities will collapse. We'll experience a TV blackout of all the channels of SABC. So Sentech will not be able to provide that because this is coming at a cost. The SABC will not be able to operate because its signal won't be distributed to the consumers. Lastly, Chair, I think you have summarized the issues about SAPO. I can't put it better than what you've said. We've always been yearning for assistance. You know, Chair, we've traveled this journey together. We've always been saying, please, the patient is sick, the patient is in ICU. If you don't come now, the patient will bleed to death. Patient being the South African Post Office. And help came, but at the time when the help came, it was too late. There was already a provisional liquidation. So that help had to be directed somewhere. So we're now saying again that there is a possibility to resuscitate and make sure that the patient survives. But we need help. So if that help does not come again, if it takes longer for the help to come, by the time the help comes, the patient might be dead and the patient might not be resuscitated. So that's where we are, Chair. Thank you very much.
Deputy Minister, I think you've clarified. It was just to help that my legacy report tell things as they are from the committee side that I chair. So you've clarified as other things will be done soon as they're already ready, so that we close the chapter on those, and that you'd follow up on these matters that really need attention, including the attention of the National Treasury. So we want to thank you for staying beyond the time that asked to be released and your team. I think that's how we summarize, honorable members, as we move to the items of the committee. Like I said, we would not keep those that may want to be excused, but allow the committee to work on adoption of its own reports as the committee support the next item on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are going to be excused.
Thank you, Tim.
Chairperson, I'll flag the report now.
Yes, the next item.
Chair, the next item is the revised APP report, Chair.
We'll scroll in case members want to raise any point before adoption. And now on observations. So that's consolidated report of the committee. Can I get a mover and seconder for adoption?
I move, Chair.
Honorable Kombu moves.
I second, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Takane seconds. No objection. If no objection, then the report is agreed to. Can we get to the other report?
This is the legacy report, Chairperson.
Legacy report, honorable members, you remember that there was an opportunity to look at the first draft, and members given an opportunity to also make submissions. So we're considering that, but I'm sure members would agree with me that the areas we would have just agreed upon on the SABC, including the bill itself, we'll just have to work those in from the content side. And maybe you would agree that probably the chair looks at that before it's sent for ATC. And this includes the report on the SAPO side. Two main points there. On the SABC, it is the investigation or review or inquiry, whatever word you want to use, on the usage of the previous bailout. In the SAPO side, there's also an issue with regard to the KPMG report, which the 7th Parliament may also want to look at its implementation to be part of the legacy report. So we'll have to check that those are in by the time the report gets to ATC. I hope there's agreement, members, before we even adopt the report, that those would have to find their way into the report. Can I get an indication that that's agreed?
Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable.
Chair, I think the report has captured all the matters that we raise. I think it's a good report for us, the legacy report for the 7th Parliament. I move for the approval of the report as was amended by the committee.
So now I understand this mic. Where is it from? Honorable Mtakane indicates agreement that the report is agreed to. So that includes the points that I take it. Okay. Is there any other view, members? Before I get a second. Whose mic is that? I can't see from my side. Please mute. There's a background sound that's coming in. So Honorable Mtakane would have indicated that we really did not need to go on a page by page. They would have looked at the report. But I've also proposed what could be additionals emanating from previous items that we've dealt with, so that it's also captured in the report before it goes to ATC. So Honorable Mtakane moved that should be the route to go. I didn't get if there's a second to that.
Yeah, I second Honorable Mtakane.
May I then check if there's an objection? It doesn't seem that there is an objection, so at least we are agreed to, because I don't want to take time on it. when it's agreed to. So the chairs agreed will then look at the report before it's ATC'd, so that we are sure that those points are put in. We now look at the minutes the same way, on a page by page. If there's correction, you can raise your hand.
Whilst Hajira is going through the minutes, just to indicate that Ms. Mazone is indicating that she has connection problems, so she might not be able to raise her hand to support whatever agenda items are currently being before the committee as a result of the connection problem. Thanks, Chair.
Probably that's the reason we see her, but we can't hear her, but she does. Anyway, if there's a objection, she can text that. It's fine. We proceed with the minutes. Those are the minutes. Can I get from those who are present? Move a seconder. A mover and seconder, so that we are done.
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Chair.
Yeah, I second your Chair.
The minutes are seconded. I take it that there's no objection in us adopting the minutes. No objection, so the minutes are agreed to. Of course, can I just check? I thought that would have been the last item on the agenda.
That's the last item, Chairperson.
All right, so I must really take the opportunity to thank you, honorable members, for your sacrifices to make time to hold the meeting. I know that a number of you may be traveling to different spaces given the Easter weekend for various reasons. It's really appreciated that you made time, but I also take the opportunity as the chair of the committee, as this may be our last meeting unless extraordinary circumstances would force us to meet as we get to constituents work. So I really send my appreciation to firstly the support that as members would have received from the committee support. Preparation of a meeting, it's quite important looking at items that come before us, and that support in the main comes from your committee support secretariat, the content advisors putting together reports that we process as members. But of course, on the side of the members, it's really from the position of chairing the meetings. Of course, there would have been some of those meetings, which I will not call difficult meetings, but call them robust meetings, where members would express their views freely so. And sometimes it may look as though there are sharp disagreements. But at the end, from a point of chairing a meeting, I would always leave the meeting very happy that at the end there is a way forward. And that way forward, in almost everything we did, whether it is statutory appointments or even the legislation before us, what has kept us together as a committee is to seek to put the best interest of the people of South Africa at the center of what we do, irrespective of the political parties we came through to this committee as the outcomes of the elections. And for that reason, most of the reports that this committee has presented to the House have been based on persuasion and general agreement amongst members. Even if it needs a vote, it would be understood why that vote would be proposed when we get to the House. But in situations where we needed to consider South Africans that can help South Africa in the different entities where, as Parliament, we play a role, this committee has really come to the party and provided the leadership that's required. Of course, there have been changes many times in the committee, but those changes indeed were not really affecting the committee negatively because we kept the way of work, that of respecting different views of members. So I really want to thank you for that. And as I say, I'm doing this from the position of the chair since I came into this committee after Honorable Hope Papo would have left and that I came in as chair. That at least this has been my experience. Even if issues were difficult, we're able to rise to the occasion. And I take it that the recommendations we make to the 7th Parliament will be considered as such. So I just want to make that point so that as we close and you go safely to your areas, I would have had a word at least from the point of the chair that chairs the committee. I see Mr. Ngoma, your hand is up. I'm not sure you want to disconnect us, but must give you the space before I close the meeting. Mr. Ngoma.
Thank you, Chairperson. I definitely will not connect you, Chairperson, without also having taken advantage of the time before us, Chairperson, and I would not be doing justice, Chair, if I cannot express our words of gratitude on behalf of the committee support staff of this 6th Parliament, Chair, for the manner in which that this committee has made and enabled the committee support staff to do its work without interference and at the best of their ability. Chair, also the support that we continuously received from this portfolio committee of Parliament of the 6th Parliament. Chairperson, I think with having served under almost 4 administration, this is one experience that we'll take with us even when we leave this institution. Chairperson, you've said so much about how this committee conducted its work from inception. And Chairperson, as part of the support staff, I can vouch that what you've said is exactly how the committee has conducted its work. And Chair, we cannot thank you enough. This has been one of our best parliamentary term, and we're looking forward in serving the 7th parliamentary term, and we're looking forward also in serving members of this committee, Chairperson, in their future endeavors. And I'm sure we'll do that proudly, Chair, as we have done in serving this committee. Chair, this message is from the committee section, from the research unit, from the various business units of Parliament, Parliament Broadcasting Services, Parliament Communication Services, the Broadcasting Unit of Parliament, Parliament TV, which made it possible for the members of the public to follow the work of this committee, Chairperson. I would like to thank you very much, and I wish all the members well. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ngoma. I thought you wanted to disconnect us, so at least there's a response from the parliamentary support staff. As I said, honorable members, it was really to thank you and wish you a safe journey as you go to different areas, also well in your constituents' work until we are able to see each other again. Meeting stays adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.